So I love chocolate. I imagine I'm like a lot of the people in this room. In the United States alone, we eat over 3 billion pounds of chocolate each year. It's pretty incredible. As I was growing up and deciding what to do with my life, I had a pretty extreme sweet tooth in my childhood. When I was 10 years old, I wrote a cookbook called Desserts Around the World. It was my first ever independent school project. My 7th grade science project studied the magic of cupcakes. So this is an area that's been of great passion for a long time. But as I was going through school, my passion for social justice really veered me into more of a focus on globalization, international trade, and my passion for chocolate stayed very squarely within the realm of a hobby and mostly snacking. And so as I went through school and developed my professional life, I actually started working for advocacy groups on Capitol Hill focused on trade. I ended up becoming a professional activist and very quickly grew from organizing street protests on trade and human rights to actually becoming a shareholder advocate at a socially responsible investment firm. My job was to advocate across the companies in our portfolio. We were a mutual fund of publicly traded companies to help them improve their performance on corporate sustainability, on water use, climate change, supply chains, the myriad areas where doing good for the planet and for people translates so often into better financial performance for shareholders. And it was actually in that world that chocolate re-entered my life in a pretty unexpected way. A group of investors were organizing multinational chocolate companies in our portfolios to become fair trade certified. And as I started researching their efforts and briefly joined them, I learned that chocolate, this product that I loved, had actually a really serious problem. And that, unfortunately, certifications like fair trade weren't actually doing the job that was needed to solve it. So I quit my job in finance and advocacy, and I became an entrepreneur. So first, let's talk a little bit about the problem. Chocolate is a huge $100 billion global industry. All of us probably interact with it on nearly a daily basis. All chocolate in the world is made from cocoa beans or cacao. It's that fruit that you see there. Chocolate comes from fruit. Most people don't know that. But here's the problem. 90% of the world's cacao is produced by 6 million smallholder farming families across the tropical belt. You got a bit of a teaser of this in the video, but as you now know, 90% of those families are living in poverty at under $2 a day, despite producing one of the world's most beloved and cherished ingredients. Why? Cacao is traded as a common commodity. Over the last 30 years, as industrial chocolate has consolidated into a handful of buyers, creating monopsony, and hedge funds have increased their speculation in the space, cacao prices have dramatically declined. They're in fact even lower than they are in this picture now. These low prices are the root cause of the child labor, slavery, malnutrition, deforestation, and poverty that are widespread across all cacao-producing communities. The commodity cocoa market is opaque and volatile, creating information asymmetry and marginalizing farmers at the end of long dirt roads even more, who don't have access to complex financial instruments to gain better prices and play the market. Chocolate manufacturers have historically said that it's impossible to know what farmers are earning in their supply chains, citing too many intermediaries, too much corruption, and too little transparency. We do know that farmers are earning only a fraction of what the commodity market price is. This just isn't right. As a chocolate lover, I couldn't handle this. It was the product that I loved so much, I just couldn't believe it. And so the question came, fair trade is solving this problem, right? Unfortunately not. So certifications like fair trade are not actually designed to be paying farmers more. They're really oriented more towards democratic cooperatives and farmer empowerment. The way that these certifications work is they attach a small premium on top of the commodity market price. That premium goes to a cooperative. The cooperative has to put it in a bank account, separate bank account from what they pay farmers. It then goes into community projects like schools, better training, better facilities for the cooperative. All of that is great, but if farmers are so poor that they can't afford to send their kids to school, and the system itself doesn't pay them enough to live their lives with dignity, then this model simply is not enough. money from fair trade purchases does not go directly to paying farmers. It's unfortunately an ethical stamp of approval that gives chocolate manufacturers the ability to sell their products as better while paying poverty prices in their supply chain. Not to mention that getting certified is expensive for farmers and chocolate makers alike. So these certifications are a good step in the right direction, but they are not the system change that the supply chain so desperately needs. My name's Emily Stone. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Uncommon Cacao. And my company is rebuilding the chocolate supply chain from the ground up, changing the system itself. We are putting more money into farmers' pockets. We believe that farmer prosperity is a key ingredient in good chocolate, and that cacao has been seriously undervalued for too long. So how do we do it? Through our own export operations on the ground in Guatemala and Belize, and with our partners, we train farmers in better quality production. We buy cacao directly from thousands of farmers and farmer organizations across Latin America, and we pay higher, transparent prices for better quality. Through this work, we've been able to create an integrated system that allows us to completely control pricing, margins, quality, and transparency across the entire supply chain. After working at Origin for 6 years, last year we raised a Series A round led by Acumen that came at a critical time for our company's growth. We were able to acquire a US-based import and sales company, allowing us to scale up our work beyond just Belize and Guatemala, where we own our own exporters, and into new countries like Colombia, Bolivia, Haiti, the Dominican Republic, and Guatemala, where we work today. I started Uncommon Cacao 7 years ago alongside chocolate manufacturers like Taza Chocolate and Lake Champlain Chocolate, who deeply understood the need for social and business model innovation in their supply chain. It's been a pretty wild ride. Over the last 7 years, we've grown from working in just Belize to now 6 countries. After working with just Taza and Mast Brothers, who you saw in that first video, for the first couple years, we now work with over 130 manufacturers across the US, Europe, Australia, and Japan. Because of our standards for quality and focus on implementing better quality from farm to bar, the chocolate manufacturers that work with us have won over 100 internationally recognized awards for quality in the last year alone. And so, why does this all matter? In the past, and even today, intermediaries are so often distrusted. They're presumed to squeeze value out of supply chains and extract value rather than add. And yet, I believe, as an intermediary, that we are uniquely positioned to drive systems change across not just cacao, but commodities of all kinds. We have unique access to raw material producers and to manufacturers, giving us the ability to connect the dots in new, innovative ways and drive more value down to origin, where it's needed, not only for social impact, but to protect the value chains for those of us who love to eat chocolate and who want to see a better world with better food in our growing population. Most importantly, we've seen the revenue across our farmer network increase by 61% in the last year alone, on average, across all the farmers that we work with. This is a trend that we've seen repeat itself year over year, as we're introducing transparent, honest pricing into farming communities, incentives for organic production. We're also able to support thriving, cohesive communities as farmers work together for the first time to produce and sell high-quality cacao into stable markets. The stability that our supply chain provides enables farmers to plan for the future, to invest in their farms, and to invest in their families' lives. So when I think about the importance of transparency in today's world, we had this conversation yesterday along what is the role of tools and technology for traceability. We live in a world that is more connected than ever, where it's possible for a farmer like Anselmo here in Lanquin, Guatemala, to connect with global markets. Yet I believe that it's critical for there to be a human interaction for all of us as consumers and all of us as intermediaries of our own ilk to recognize the importance of our role in these global systems. I was just a chocolate consumer. I was just a chocolate lover. And yet recognizing the faces and the people and the systems behind the supply chains of the products we love is the critical step that all of us in this room need to be taking in order to create better and more just systems. This year, we were the first supply chain company in the world, first supply chain company in the chocolate supply chain, and potentially one of the first in the world. We don't know that for a fact yet, which is why I can't quite say it, to publish margins and pricing across our entire supply chain. So from what farmers like Anselmo are earning for each kilo of cacao that they sell, all the way to the price that we are selling that cacao to chocolate makers. We call it radical transparency, and I believe it is the new trend for intermediaries of the future. We can no longer live in a world where chocolate manufacturers can throw up their hands and say, it's impossible to know the prices that were paid in our supply chain. We are rejecting that claim. We're showing it's possible, and we're showing it's good business. That there is no need for these supply chains to be so opaque and so oppressive to the people who give us the raw materials, the inputs, the ideas, and the future of cultivation that we need in order to eat food moving forward. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking, sort of, how can I help to scale uncommonly good chocolate and uncommonly good cacao? I have a couple of ideas. So one is that if you happen to know, or if you yourself make or buy chocolate at scale, this is anything more than like a chocolate bar a day, please get in touch with me. Please get in touch with me. We're always looking for new markets, and it does not have to be limited to chocolate. If you know people in granola, in cookies, cereal, all of these are areas that are working in the old system. We want to be moving people into the new system. We work with 130 manufacturers now. We are at scale within the craft chocolate space, but we want to be growing faster. We want to be working with larger buyers. We believe that it's in their interest to be protecting their supply chain and creating the stability for their own farmers. Second idea, there's clearly a huge gap between where consumers are today and where we need them to be in order to make these kinds of transparent, high-value supply chains possible, especially in chocolate. If you're a branding or marketing genius, or you happen to know people who are, we need you to help jolt consumers awake and put the issue of supply chains and transparency on the forefront of everyone who walks into a supermarket. And thirdly, of course, as a young, growing company, we're always seeking capital. So we are currently raising, and if that's something that's of interest to you, please talk to Acumen. We are really only at the beginning of this story. As I mentioned, cacao represents just one example of a crop that's in desperate need of supply chain innovation. The over-commoditization of our food system is unfortunately leading all of us into a world of much greater industrialization and environmentally destructive large-scale farming practices. If we don't create better business models where smallholder farmers can produce their own crops and sell into global markets transparently and fairly, then we are at risk of the smallholder farmer becoming a historical relic within just a few generations. So I urge you to join me, to join Acumen, in helping us all make the future of chocolate uncommonly honest, uncommonly delicious, and uncommonly catalytic for millions of rural farming families who depend on the cacao industry for their livelihoods. We are facing a lot of massive global challenges right now, and I have no doubt that we will all be eating a lot of chocolate as we work through them all. So together, let's make eating all of that chocolate something we can really feel good about. Thank you.